Okay. Yeah, no. It's okay. Brihat, great. Atmalingam, the real form of the self. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body. And one after another, he gradually attains the stage of existence from earthly to watery, fiery, glowing, and airy, until he reaches the ethereal stage. Anyone who can reach Brahmaloka, Satyaloka, by dint of spiritual perfection and practice is qualified to attain three different types of perfection. One who has attained a specific planet by dint of pious activities attains places in terms of his comparative pious activities. One who has attained the place by dint of Virat or Hiranyagarbha worship is liberated along with the liberation of Brahma. But one who attains the place by dint of devotional service is specifically mentioned here. In relation to how he can penetrate into the different coverings of the universe and thus ultimately disclose his spiritual identity in the absolute atmosphere of supreme existence. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, is there like an echo? Something?
No, it's happening is it bounces off the wall and then
Whoa, that's far out. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, all the universes are clustered together up and down, and each and every one of them is separately sevenfold covered. The watery portion is beyond the sevenfold coverings, and each covering is 10 times more expansive than the previous covering. The personality of Godhead who creates all such universes by his breathing period lies above the cluster of universes. The water of the causal ocean is differently situated than the covering water of the universe. The water that serves as covering for the universe is material, whereas the water of the causal ocean is spiritual. As such, the watery covering mentioned herein is considered to be the false egoistic covering of all living entities, and the gradual process of liberation from material coverings one after another, as mentioned herein, is a gradual process of being liberated from the false egoistic conceptions of the material gross body, and then being absorbed in the identification of the subtle body, till the attainment of the pure spiritual body in the absolute realm of the kingdom of God. Srila Sridhar Swami confirms that a part of the material nature after being initiated by the Lord is known as Mahatattva. A fractional portion of the Mahatattva is called the false ego. A portion of the ego is vibration of sound, and a portion of sound is atmospheric air. A portion of the airy atmosphere is turned into forms, and the forms constitute the power of electricity or heat. Heat produces the smell of the aroma of earth, and the gross earth is produced by such aroma. All these combined together constitute the cosmic phenomenon. The extent of the cosmic phenomenon is calculated to be diametrically both ways 4 billion miles. Then the coverings of the universe begin. The first stratum of the covering is calculated to extend 80 million times, and the subsequent coverings of the universe are respectively of fire, effulgence, air, and ether, one after another, each extending 10 times further than the previous one. Like 4 million, 40 million, 400 million, 4,000 million, I don't even know how to say it. The fearless devotee of the Lord penetrates each one of them and ultimately reaches the absolute atmosphere where everything is one and the same spiritual identity. Everything is of one and the same. Not everything is one. Everything is of one and the same spiritual identity. Then the devotee enters one of the Vaikuntha planets, where he assumes exactly the same form as the Lord and engages in the loving service of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of devotional life. Beyond this, there is nothing to be desired or achieved by the perfect yogi. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tafpada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagan Lalita, Sri Vishakanvatamsya, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye, Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sadubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminati Namane Guru Vadana Vido Nisyandita Desha Vrinda Amrita Nibrita Sarit Samplavita Shesha Deshaha Harirati Phaladhana Swadanananda Dhama Bhuvijayati Vikaso Bhakti Purvo Yatindraha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminati Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Deshatarine Vagisha yasya vadane lakshmir yasya chivakshisi yasyaste hridaye samvit tam nrsimhamaham bhaje. Mukham karti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatam aham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so the section of the Srimad Bhagavatam is describing the yogis' travel from this from the earthly realm all the way, finally all the way through to the topmost planet of this material universe, and through the coverings of the universe, and finally all the way back to Vaikuntha. And an interesting point actually is that one of the descriptions of the universe given in the 5th canto, the description of the universe given in the 5th canto is actually given from the perspective of the yogi who's traveling like this. I actually heard it from Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj when he came to New York. His disciple was telling me this. That when the yogi, you see this actually is one of the routes that the yogis actually take in order for them to be freed from this engagement of this material universe, and this is the route that they take. In the description, who's read the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam so far? You? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of course. So we read the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. There's a description of how the entire universe is and all these things, and that's why Sada Putra Prabhu, right? He's a devotee who was into this stuff. Right, he was into that. So he actually said, he was actually quoting from some Shastra that it'll take, if one really wants to understand how the entire universe looks and does all these things, they have to continue studying for 20,000 lifetimes. And then they can actually understand how the entire geography and structure of the universe works. Because we're reading these things, we're reading how, how a person can actually reach this different, reach Satyaloka through the different processes given in the Vedic system. And in this purport further is being explained how Jiva Goswami is speaking about how each and every one of the universe is sevenfold covered, and the watery portion is there and the fiery portion is there. And each portion is 10 times bigger. So one portion is 4 million times, 4 million yojanas. The next one is 40 million. The next one is 400 million. Like this, 4,000 million. Like this, 7 times 0. At every layer, each 0 is added like that 7 times. So when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, when we're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, we need to understand that this Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna himself. So one of the things, if we read in the Nectar of Devotion, we'll see that one of the rasas that Krishna actually inspires in the hearts of the devotees is Adbhuta rasa. Right? What does Adbhuta mean? No, that's bhaya. That's ghastly. No. Not inconceivable, not ghastly. Huh? Wonderful. It's called Adbhuta, means wonderful. Krishna is so wonderful. That's why we say Keshava Dhrita Narhari Rupa. Jai Adbhuta Shringam, right? Adbhuta Shringa. It's like wonderful. Like, wow, this form of Nrsimhadev is so wonderful, never seen before. Half man, half lion form is so wonderful. No one's ever seen such a form. Adbhuta. Adbhuta rasa. It's meant to strike this appreciation of Krishna in this wonderful. Krishna is so wonderful. Wow, it's really amazing how wonderful Krishna really is. So when we read these descriptions of the Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavatam of the universe, and how all these things are created and all this thing is going on, one can only be at complete awe and reverence as to how great the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. Yasyaika nishvashita kala matavalambhya jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanaataha. Vishnu Swayam Para Vishnu Maha, what's the rest of it? Kala Vishesho Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Brush up on the Brahma Samhita. So we see over here that a portion of the portion of Krishna is actually the person who is the intelligence behind all these things. Sometimes we wonder, we look at a machine, we wonder, wow, this machine is so complicated. The person who made this machine must be really intelligent. Like even now, I'm always like, every time I'm in an airplane and I'm flying, I'm thinking, wow, this is really amazing. Like, how did we figure out how to fly? How did this Vimana come about? And so much intelligence must have gone behind it, and so many things are there to figure out. It's all figured out, and we are always at awe and wonder at the person, wow, this person is so intelligent that he can make something which will fly from one place to another. That's so wonderful. That's so amazing. And it is wonderful and it is amazing for sure. But then how much more wonderful and amazing is Krishna, who made the person who made this. Krishna is so wonderful. Krishna is so amazing. How much more wonderful is Krishna, who is making all the planets float. They're just floating by the strength of his potency. It's hard for us to lift something. It's hard for us to lift, like, let's just say, maybe we can lift one box of Bhagavatams, that's 50 pounds. Maybe we can lift 2 boxes of Bhagavatams, 100, maybe 3. But then if you had to lift 10 boxes of Bhagavatam, that's 500 pounds. That's so heavy. That's so heavy. And you can't even imagine lifting such a thing. But Krishna's expansion, Ananta Shesh, Yakarna Narva Jale Bhajati Sma Yoga, Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saloma Kupa. That Ananta Shesh is actually there, and he is holding all the universes on the top of on the top of his hood. And they feel like as though just a small mustard is placed on that. And that Ananta Shesh is a portion of Krishna. So when we look at these things, we actually feel wonder, wow, how wonderful. Krishna is so strong that, one of the commentators, they say that, oh, Krishna is, what's so wonderful about Krishna lifting the Govardhan hill? He's lifting the entire planets all together. What's so wonderful? But it is so wonderful. It is so wonderful when we see these things, that this aspect of awe and like reverence into the Supreme Personality of Godhead increases. This person is so great. He's so wonderful. He can do so many amazing things. Krishna is creating this universe, and he's also within every atom of the universe. Krishna does so many amazing things that we cannot even conceive of. So when we see this, we understand it like that. That, there's all these different coverings are there. And in order for us, that's why we need to understand that from where we are sitting right now, from wherever we are sitting, and all the way to Goloka Vrindavan is a far, 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 far distance away. All the way. It's so far away. Goloka Vrindavan is so far away that we cannot even imagine how far away we are, geographically speaking. We are so far away from the spiritual sky. We're so far away. But Krishna is not so heartless that he'll just let us rot here. Krishna is always scheming different ways and means by which we can actually go back all the way up there. And we see this. That's why we chant every morning, Nikunja Ratikeli Siddhya Yayali Bhiryukti Rapekshaniya Tatrati Daksha Dati Vallabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. The spiritual master is Daksha, Tatrati Daksha, he's a Daksha. He's very expert at arranging for all the different pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's also very expert at giving instructions which will take one all the way up to the groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. So this instructions given to us by Srila Prabhupada, it's like one line going all the way up, And my spiritual master speaks about this in this lecture known as Carrying the Weight of the Parampara. It's an ecstatic lecture given in Kanchipuram on his Vyasa Puja. It's really amazing. So in this lecture, he's speaking about how Like the line going from where we're sitting right now all the way to Goloka Vrindavan is one straight line, and it's going there. And as long as we strictly adhere to what Srila Prabhupada taught us and all the instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave, to that degree we're going to be exactly aligned with that line. But if we simply start to make a small change, like, the line is going up, you just tilt it by a small degree, just a small degree here, a small degree there. As far as our mundane vision or like as far as our limited vision is concerned, it seems like both the lines are going in the same way. But if there's a slight change of degree of that line, then eventually it'll end up somewhere else. It won't end up in Vrindavan. It'll end up somewhere else. It won't end up in the spiritual world. It'll end up somewhere in this material world, somewhere. It may seem, for the materially contaminated eyes, it may seem like, wow, at least it's a higher standard of higher standard of living. But ultimately, any place in the material world is not a happy place to live. Any place in the material world is bound to be destroyed. Therefore, when we read this, it's meant to strike in us a feeling of complete sharanagati, a feeling of complete prapatti, that we are throwing ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna via his bona fide representatives. When we throw ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna, when we throw ourselves at the Supreme Personality of Godhead, saying, we are users. What is this? Ami tu kangal, Krishna Krishna boli, dahitava pache pache. That we fall at the lotus feet of the great Vaishnava Acharyas. We fall at their lotus feet and we tell them, like, Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro, tomar ashakati yache. Ami tu kangal, Krishna Krishna boli, dahitava pache pache. Dahitava, not dahi. Dahi is yogurt. Dahitava pache pache. That, we follow the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas and we tell them, Krishna is yours and certainly you can give him to him. That's why I'm falling at your lotus feet. Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro. Tomar ashakati yache. You have this energy, you have the Shakti to bestow upon me this great wealth of Krishna. Ami tu kangal, Krishna Krishna boli, dahitava pache pache. Therefore, that's why I am crying and running behind you, shouting Krishna, 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 Krishna. We are going behind the great acharyas. We're chanting the names of Krishna. And we're crying and begging for the mercy of the previous acharyas. Because, you just imagine, can we imagine making this all the way out of this material world alone as a lone yogi by ourselves? Like, it really seems like, oh my God, what is this? And like, it's so crazy. Can you imagine? I was just thinking about this, that, oh my God, like, how do we detach ourselves? Even to not think of sense gratification in our dreams seems like a really impossible task, right? Even if we were so like Krishna conscious that one particular day where we really got some special mercy or something. If we are so Krishna conscious that one particular day where we got the special mercy, and we were completely focused on doing our service, and we come back and we take prasadam and we completely knock out. Sometimes, even in the dreams, sometimes we may think of sense gratification. We think of sense gratification, and that's because the mind is so polluted. The mind is so polluted with so many different impressions from our so many different past lives. So many desires are there. They're all present within our heart. But the yogi, he's able to conquer that mind. He's able to do all these things. And he's able to completely detach himself from all the material elements. Like we're seeing over here, that the yogi, he goes out, he detaches himself from the earthly like kind of forms. Then he detaches himself from the watery kind of forms and the fiery kind of forms, the airy, and then finally reaches the ethereal forms. And then from the ethereal form, he actually reaches into his real Swarup. This whole purport is speaking about how the yogi finally attains his Swarup in the spiritual world. Swarup means he understands his eternal constitutional position in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He finally understands his exact relationship with the Supreme Lord. And he detaches himself from all these different things. That's why in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj as to how at the time of dissolution, what happens is that the grosser elements enter into the subtler elements. That we can see that the earth element enters into the water element. Then the earth and the water enter into the fire element. And the earth water, fire enter into the air element. And the earth, water, fire, and air enter into the ether element. And these 5 enter into the mind element. And then these 6 enter into the intelligence. And these 7 enter into the false ego. And then they go back into the pradhan, which goes back into the Mahatattva. It works backwards. At the time of creation, like is being mentioned here, that Mahatattva is a small portion of Mahatattva is false ego. A small portion of that false ego is a vibration. And from vibration comes that ether. From ether comes the element of water. From the element of from ether comes the element of air. From air comes the element of fire. From fire comes the element of water. And finally, from that smell and all these things, finally earth comes about. The element of earth comes about. So at the time of dissolution, the exact opposite happens. The exact opposite happens, where all elements are absorbed into everything. And then Shukadeva Goswami, I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, he says, in a very sarcastically, do you understand this? And he says sarcastically, O king. We think he says that because, in order to, of course, show us, but tell a disciple that you may have a conception of being a king, but this is what's going to happen to the entire material universe. So do you still think you are a king? We may think we're so great. We may try to make so many achievements, but our so-called achievements and all these things are no more significant than a dog pissing on a pole, saying this is my area. How long will that dog exist? How long will all these things exist? Nothing is permanent in this material world. So when we read these kinds of things, we understand that, wow, we are so insignificant. We can't even understand. And yogis, they enter into all these different ways. Now, they learn to control their senses. And it's very, very rare for them to make it all the way to Satyaloka. It's a very rare thing. Most yogis, they stop somewhere else. Because it's the desire, the senses to not be attracted to the sense objects is a very, very high thing. The senses are not attracted to the sense objects on a gross platform. For them to not be attracted on a subtle platform, that's a really, really high thing. It's a very high thing. Therefore, how much strength they should have, they need to have. How much concentration, how much focus, how much determination. The tenacity of their practice, the intensity of their practice needs to be so fixed. It needs to be completely laser focused. It needs to be focused in one shot attention on they're doing it themselves. That's why tapasya is done alone. If one wants to perform these kinds of austerities, it's done alone. You don't do it with someone else. That's why jnanis, yogis, they all like to not be with other people. They like to live by themselves. Why? Why are the jnanis recommended to live by themselves and not with anyone else? They'll fight them because they both speculating about the nature of the absolute truth. No, it's like this. No, it's like that. No, it's like this. No, it's like that. And they'll kind of ruin it for everyone. They have to come up with their own kind of mental speculation. Understand it this way, that way, this way, that way. And then maybe then some of them may even do it according to Shastra. But even their understanding of Shastra may differ. So all these things may go on, and then that's why they're not recommended to be with each other. So they have to run it like the lone man, the lone man, the lone warrior, all the way to go up to Vaikuntha. All the way. So that's not a very easy thing. It's not a very easy thing. In the Shastra we see there's so many examples of fallen yogis. And you see, unlike devotional service, where Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, what's the verse speaking about there's no loss or diminution in this process? Who knows this verse? That's right. Neha bikramanasosti pratyavayana vidyate so alpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That, even if one makes a slight bit of advancement on this path of devotional service, then, there is no loss or diminution, because this advancement that one makes in the path of devotional service is eternal. It eternally stays in their bank account, in their spiritual bank account. But for the yogis, they may practice controlling the senses. They may do all these things. But ultimately, if they use up all their acquired piety and acquired potency and all these things, if they use it in their sense gratification, then they again have to start over again. And the most famous example, of course, is Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni, he was performing so many austerities, he was doing all these things. His goal was to become a Brahmarshi. And Lord Brahma comes and tells him, yes, I'll offer you a benediction. I'll give you a benediction to become a Devarshi. Then he says, no, I want to be a Brahmarshi. And he continues performing his pastimes. And it's not pastimes, his austerities. And then Indra gets envious, and he sends Menaka. And then Menaka, she manages to distract him. And she manages to distract him. He's so allured by her. And he's using up all his acquired potency and Shakti to enjoy her. And he completely loses track of what's actually going on. Like, what is this, He completely loses track, and he's with us for so many years, and he's running out of all his potency and, all his acquired pious credits. And then, one day, he wants to go and do his Sandhya Vandanam or something, and then she laughs at him, and she's like, what are you saying? You didn't do this in such a long time, in so many years, 10 years or 100 years. You didn't even, imagine not chanting your Gayatri for 10 years. Imagine not chanting your rounds for 10 years. Yeah, I need to start chanting my rounds. And people are like, what are you doing? You haven't done this for so long. But she lured him. And he's like, oh my God, please, you please go away. You please leave. Then again, he performs austerities, and then finally he performs devotional service. Right? Who is the other yogi who saw 2 fishes copulating inside the water? Sharba, right? Yeah, Sharbi Muni, that's right, Sharbi Muni. Atharva, Atri Rishi. So, Shabri, right? No. What's it? No. What's his name? Saubari, okay, right. He was sitting in the ocean and he's meditating. In the river and he's meditating. Of course, he performs, he's offensive to Garuda, that's why he falls down. But, he looks at 2 fishes copulating, and from that the sex desire comes about. And by doing this, he again gets entangled. He just doesn't want one wife. He doesn't get one wife. He doesn't get one itself is hard enough, I've been told. But he doesn't get one. He doesn't get 2. He gets 50. Can you imagine? Torture. So he gets 50 wives. And then he has to take care of all 50 of them. And he does all this cool mystic yoga stuff. And then he's like, what am I doing? What is this? Is this why, I became a yogi? Initially none of them even wanted. You can understand the skin deep love that people feel for each other in this material world. That's why, I don't think you'll ever heard this before. I'm going to say it to you. There's no love in this material world. Love is for Krishna. Did you ever hear that one? That's what I was saying. This is the first time. It's cool. So, there's no love in this material world. Love is for Krishna. And from this pastime of Shaubari Muni, right? Shaubari Muni, we understand that, how skin deep this so-called attraction between male and female is, right? It's so skin deep. The first comes in as a yogi, and he comes and he tells the king, please let me marry one of your daughters. And all the daughters I don't want to marry you. You're like an old guy and have all this beard and you look so undesirable. Then he just does a yogic trick and he becomes like a prince, and all of them start fighting amongst each other. I want to marry him. And they all of a sudden fell in love with him. He's so bogus. Love was nonsense. Anyway, sorry, brahmachari side talk. But the point still remains that there's yogis, it's just they have, there's so many distractions, and they're by themselves. Even Bharat Maharaj, he was by himself. Although he was not performing this kind, he was performing devotion service. Still, we can't imagine running it alone. You've got to run it alone the whole time. There's so many things which come in our way. It's unbelievable, insurmountable, more or less, But Prabhupada said that he was speaking about the same pastime of Vishwamitra Muni as to how he was, performing all these austerities, and then Menaka came, and then again he performed all these austerities and all these things. But this is the famous lecture in LA, and we strongly recommend everyone listens to this lecture. I think it's an arrival address or a selection, I don't remember. And Praghosh Prabhu was in this room when Prabhupada was giving this class. And Prabhupada said, that Vishwamitra Muni, he performed so many austerities for 60,000, Prabhupada would not say 60,000 years, he would say 60,000s of years. Prabhupada would say this so often. 60,000s of years, And he performed so many austerities and acquired so many pious credits. And then he pauses, and all the devotees, their attention zooms in on Srila Prabhupada. But just by doing Sankirtan for 3 days, one attains more pious credit and more mystic power and more devotional service to Krishna than Vishwamitra Muni. And the whole room exploded. It literally exploded. All the devotees were like, they were ready to like just go crazy. Because that's the nature of devotional service. That's why you see how fearless one has to be to go through all these things. And it's not just fearful, it's very alluring. Because as we're going through this different planetary systems, if we come to Satyaloka, and beyond Satyaloka, as we are piercing through each layer of the universe, on each layer, there's 10 times more sense gratification on the subtle platform than there is in Satyaloka. Then we from Satyaloka, we go to the watery region. There's 10 times more pleasure. Then we go into the fiery region. Then there's 10 times more pleasure than that. Then you go to the airy region. There's 10 times more. Then ethereal. All these different regions we go to, and there's more and more pleasure. And the Bhagavatam says there are some living entities who actually live in those places, and they really are enjoying on the subtle level. We can't even imagine. You see, like, sometimes in the mode of goodness, when we're able to control our mind even a little bit, then we can actually like start to experience like, wow, this is actually like pretty good. Like I'm not being affected by all the things I used to be affected. But just imagine, Lord Brahma's body is made completely of intelligence. That's what his body is made of. And then as we break through these layers, it becomes even more subtle. How much more pleasure they can derive from these things. So much more. And how fearless they should also be to run it on their own, to be that lone warrior, Must be very difficult. That's why those who make it, hats off to them, that's great. But as far as we're concerned, we are actually, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of the previous acharyas, we can actually attain a much higher level of devotional advancement and spiritual advancement simply by sticking to the path laid down by Srila Prabhupada. Simply by sticking to the path chalked out by Srila Prabhupada, we can actually go much above and beyond what these yogis can even go. That's the beauty of it. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yogi nam api sarvesham madkatena antaratmanaha shraddhavan bhajate yomam sameyukta tamomataha. That Yogi nam api sarvesham, who is the greatest yogi? Which is the greatest yogi? Yogi nam api sarvesham madkatena antaratmanaha, a person who is always thinking of me within his heart. And how does he think of Krishna? How does he? Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. One needs to have that shraddha. One needs to have that firm faith. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. That one worships Krishna with that firm faith. Firm faith. We worship Krishna with that firm faith. Sameyukta tamomataha. When we worship Krishna with that firm faith, then we will far surpass all these other activities which are laid down, all these other mystic yogic processes and this and that and this and that. We become so much more advanced. It becomes so much more easier because we're directly coming in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Because although the spiritual world is so far away, the Bhagavatam says, Tirthi kurvanti tirthani, that wherever the great devotees are present, that place itself becomes a tirtha. What does the word tirtha mean? What does it mean, tirtha? Huh? To cross over. It's like a portal, right? And my spiritual master gave I think 27 or 30 lectures on this word tirthakar. 40 lectures on this word tirthakar. I strongly recommend everyone hears it. It's really awesome. And that he's speaking about how, like these places of pilgrimage, all these are tirthas, they go from one place to another. But, to cross. No, tirtha is a portal, and when you come there and do it, then you become tirthaka. He makes you cross over, and he explains it in so many different ways. So we understand that the places or the temples, that are established by Srila Prabhupada, and the places which are actually following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, they become non-different from the spiritual world. Become non-different from the spiritual world. That we can actually become a completely self-realized soul, understand who we are in the spiritual world in this life, if we simply follow the program given to us by Srila Prabhupada. That yes, full Swarup Siddhi can be attained if we simply follow this process. Everything, we can get everything. Prabhupada gave us everything in order for us to go back home, back to Godhead in this life. But we are so unfortunate we don't take to the process. That's our great misfortune. If we come so close and we see what Srila Prabhupada is saying, but then we are too envious of the principles of pure devotional service and start preaching bogus stuff in the names in the name of following Prabhupada, then we are the greatest fools or the greatest cheaters. The people like us, if we don't follow Prabhupada properly, or those people who don't follow Prabhupada properly, or who are not even attempting to follow Prabhupada properly, they are known as Atmahan. What does Atmahan mean? Killers of their own soul. They're known as Atmahan. Because we've come so close. We're so close. We have everything. We have the best grandfather guru. Prabhupada is our grandfather. He's our spiritual master. We have the best guru. We have the best process. We have the best of everything. But if we don't follow Prabhupada properly, then we're completely ruined and doomed. Why is it that in the Krishna consciousness movement, we are having deities of demigods in the temples? Why is it that we are catering to all these other nonsensical things which Srila Prabhupada never asked us to cater to? Why is it that in the Krishna conscious temples in North America nowadays there's smoking zones outside? Smoking zones in the temple for people to smoke. Why is it that in Srila Prabhupada's temples, Prabhupada's words and Prabhupada's instructions are being downgraded? Why is it that when new temples are being built, there's only 1 or 2 rooms made for people who may come to stay? Whereas in Prabhupada's time, when a temple was built, it was very certain that there would be enough facility for full-time devotees, brahmacharis to live and stay and perform their service. Why is it when the new temples are built, there's maybe 1 sannyasi room and another room for someone else? And why is it that if a new temple is being built, we make sure that they have yoga studios in there? Did Prabhupada come from the spiritual world into our lives to open yoga studios? Did Prabhupada come in the spiritual world into our lives so we can worship demigods? Did Prabhupada come from the spiritual world into our lives so we can do mundane philanthropic activities? No. Prabhupada didn't come for that. That's why we tell everyone, we are done with the Hindu Bindu demigod worship. We are done with the mundane philanthropic activities. We are done with the bogus yoga studios. Now it's time for Sankirtan Samadhi. Now it's time for us to fix ourselves in this process of distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Now is the best time to do it. There's never been a better time than this. If we simply focus on this book distribution given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and we don't deviate even for a single moment from this instruction given to us by Srila Prabhupada, success is guaranteed. Success is guaranteed. How do we attain our Swarup Siddhi? Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, Shri Daita Das, Kirtane Se Ash, Koro Uchai Shava, Harinama Rava, Kirtan Prabhave, Smarana Swabhave. Shri Daita Das, who's Shri Daita Das? That's another name for Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Shri Daita Das, Kirtane Se Ash, that his desire is everyone does this kirtan. And how do they do it? Koro Uchai Shava, Harinama Rava. That we must go all in and all out. Chant the holy names of the Supreme Lord loudly. Do this kirtan real loud. Kora Uchai Shava Harinama Rava. Then Kirtana Prabhave. By performing this kirtan, Kirtana Prabhave, Smarana Swabhave, you will actually be able to remember your Swabhav. You'll actually be able to understand, realize. This is not some mumbo-jumbo nonsense. This is the process of self-realization. We can go back home, back to Godhead in this life if we follow this process. Therefore, Kirtan Prabha, Sri Daita Das, Kirtan, Koro Uchai Shava Harinama Rava. That's why, yes, we're doing Kirtan. We're playing the Mridanga and Kartals and we're chanting the holy names of Krishna. That should never stop. That should always stop. But louder than this Mridanga is a Brihat Mridanga. We play this Brihat Mridanga loud. We simply keep playing it. And Prabhupada said, they think this old man is dying. They think this old man is dying. But little do they know that I'm playing my Brihat Mridanga all over the world. So Prabhupada is still here in the form of his instructions. Prabhupada is still here in the form of his books. Prabhupada is still here. The follower lives with Srila Prabhupada. This is the way to live with Prabhupada. There's never been a better time. There's never been a better situation. Conquer your stupid damn mind. Please get off the mental platform. At least for the next 5-6 days, for 1 week. For once in your life, do something that we can actually fix ourselves and go ahead and do the needful. Let's go and do it. We just have 1 week left. Okay, we reached our target, so what? It's not enough for Krishna. We have to go ahead and we really have to push ourselves. Now it's time for Sankirtan Samadhi. Now it's time for Sankirtan Samadhi. Now it's time for Sankirtan Samadhi. We have to do this. And by doing this, then, yes, we can attain something much more than this. So, can you just send me the screenshot of where we're at? We finished the quotes yesterday. So I'll read another quote. This is a really good one. So, this is a quote from July 31st, 2022, written by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj over here. He says, may devotees of Krishna Life Atlanta continue to distribute thousands of Srila Prabhupada's books for his divine pleasure. Signed, Bhakti Vikas Swami, Canterbury, July 31st, 2022. So let's do this. We leave no stone unturned. Now we got it. Now is our time to shine. Let's go. Let's do bigger than we've ever done before. Let's go all out. Let's go all out. It seems like it's impossible. We're at 16,300 bhakti stacks. Now we want to reach 20,000 bhakti stacks. By the way, we've also postponed the marathon by 1 day. So the marathon is going to end on January 2nd. There's a reason for that. I'll tell you about it. So the marathon is going to end on January 2nd. So we have 1 extra day. Okay. So what's today? Today is Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We have 7 days. 7 days we have to do, 3,700 bhakti stack works. I think teamwork can make the dream work. We all got to get together and do it, make it happen. And by doing this, yes, we will go much above and beyond, what's being mentioned in this verse. Okay, so I'll end my class here. Parivadatu jano yata tatavan anumukaro navayam navicharayamaha. Harirasa madira madati matta bhuvi viluttama natama nirvishama. Let the garrulous populace say whatever they like, criticize us however they like. But as far as we're concerned, we're going to get drunk in this Harirasa madira, in this intoxicant of serving Lord Hari, and roll about on the floor in divine ecstasy. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Prabhupada